we are given a body, and it does create emotions and feelings, and fasting creates an intersection point of those two things.
Hi, welcome back to another week of Behind and Beyond. I'm Allison, and this week I get to sit down with Pastor Dave as we discuss this past week's sermon. Dave, welcome back to the podcast.
Pastor Dave or Trucker Dave? What are we?
Trucker Dave.
What are we going
yeah, we got a message last week from the podcast that people thought if I'm podcast girl, then Trucker Dave feels like a good name for you as well. So.
I was having trouble waking up, but once we get into this, I get fired up, man. I do. I love
Trucker
this.
Dave just comes alive,
Trucker Dave.
ready to go.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah.
Hey, okay, so you started off talking about being hangry in the mall, so I thought, let's just start with what's your favorite snack? What's your go-to mall food?
Oh, Auntie Anne's pretzels.
Me too.
Hands down.
I was wondering what you're going to say.
My daughter got me into dipping them in cream cheese. Do you ever dip a pretzel in cream cheese?
No.
They have a cup of, they'll give you it's extra.
Yeah.
40 cents or whatever. Nacho cheese or whatever. They have cream cheese, and it's like a pretzel bagel kind of a thing.
Do you just get a plain one or cinnamon sugar?
It depends on how we're feeling that day.
Yeah.
I do like the cinnamon sugar ones. They make your fingers real messy.
Yeah.
And those things are greasier than you think. It's like a pretzel. But I love those things.
Okay, can I tell you something about Auntie Anne's?
I like the bites too. Do you like the bites? The
I
pretzel
do.
bites?
Actually, I like the bites a lot because
easy to go.
It's easier.
Yeah.
Especially cinnamon sugar.
Yeah.
It's not as messy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But listen to this. So my mom lost 40 pounds on Auntie Anne's pretzels.
How?
No one ever believes me on that. Can you believe that? On cinnamon sugar pretzels, on the cinnamon sugar ones.
What? Hey, I met Auntie Anne.
Me too. At that conference.
At the leadership conference.
I did. I got a picture for my mom. Sent it to her. Yeah.
I got a picture with her because Doug Smith made me. He's like, you're getting a picture with Auntie Anne. I'm like, I don't do pictures with celebrities.
I do.
Whatever.
Auntie Anne's. I'm like, let's go right now.
Awesome.
Yeah. No, listen. So this is important because I feel like no one ever believes me about this.
I have a second favorite mall food, so we'll get to it in a second. But tell me.
She kind of, when I was in high school, college, my mom just decided every day she'd have a cinnamon sugar pretzel and a Diet Pepsi from Auntie Anne's instead of eating her other normal lunches. And
that's some diet.
I do think she cut down her
So it's a calorie
dinner.
cut. Yeah.
Yeah, overall it was a calorie cut. Yeah. Yes, and it worked. And she lost 40 pounds. 40 pounds.
How long did she do this?
I'd have to get the details.
And she
from
did
her.
the cinnamon sugar one.
Cinnamon sugar, and it became such a thing.
That's really a funny story
at our mall that she got the employee discount because she ate there so much.
That's really funny.
And they had it ready for her.
Yeah.
She would show up and they were like, "Here you go." It was ready to go. They knew her order.
Pretty cool. It's like Cheers, place where they know your name.
And she got a certificate as most valued customer for the year. So
this is hilarious.
Yeah. So Auntie Anne's forever, near and dear to my heart.
You have a TED Talk on that. You could do a TED Talk because that's such a unique angle. It's unexpected, but there's something to grasp from all of that. Maybe I'm not
sure what the depth of what the lesson is there.
It's there.
There's something.
That's a fascinating tale. It's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, what's your second?
Sbarro Pizza. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. I love Sbarro.
And I'm a pizza nerd, and I do love, it's New York style pizza. And I know it's mall.
No, it's good.
It's good.
Yeah.
It is good. And they have
actually, the Stromboli.
The Stromboli is very good as well. Yeah. Those are two good ones. And I will always get some Chinese food at the mall or Japanese food. Yeah. So, yeah.
Were you a mall rat as a kid?
No. We lived afar. Our mall was we just didn't go there that often. Brooke I remember she said when she got her license, first place you go is to the mall. I didn't. I wasn't into that sort of a thing. That wasn't our family rhythm. But were you? Were you a mall rat?
Yeah, for sure.
That was a movie too, Mallrats. I don't know if you remember that one.
No, but I mean, I grew up in the middle of nowhere.
How far was your drive to the mall?
20 minutes.
Okay, that was ours. My mall was the Beaver Valley Mall, which it's struggling to hang on right now, but it's not far from our Beaver Valley campus. Yeah. But that was the mall, and then Ross Park got built, and it was like, whoa, now that's a mall.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I loved every weekend. I was trying to go to the mall, pretty much.
The older I get, so we had a season where we loved malls. I don't love being in a mall. I like outside shopping. That's kind of my preference when it's nice out and you can kind of get outside. You go in a store and then you're out and grab a cup of coffee, and especially on great days. But anyways, I make doing them all.
Yeah. All right.
I can find my way around. Yeah.
Well, Annie Ann's, if you'd like to sponsor us, here's
absolutely.
the podcast.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, this week we were talking through the practice of fasting.
And you asked about food. That feels like a bait and switch of sorts.
Well, I mean, you started us with the mall conversation.
That's
so
right.
I'm just diving in.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're right. Hangry. That's good.
Just before we dive into the questions I have, anything that you felt like you didn't get to cover that you wanted to talk about, or any other angles?
There was more scripture that I wanted to cover, and I ran out of time in the moment, so I was kind of cutting it on the fly. But no, I think there's a temptation to try and say everything you can about fasting.
Yeah.
So I did want to go into more depth about Daniel's fast and Esther's fast and Ezra's fast, and particularly I hadn't really studied this, but the church at Antioch, they fasted 3 days before sending Paul and Barnabas. So there was some depth and mining there, but it was not leading towards where I felt like I needed to go with the sermon. So I mentioned them, and I did more of like a flyover in the sermon versus like talk about each of them at depth. I didn't have time.
Yeah.
So that was probably the place I had to cut the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Actually, that kind of leads into my next question. There is such a rich history of fasting in scriptures.
Yeah.
And as we've been talking through the practices, so what have we covered so far? We did scripture, service, generosity,
and fasting.
And I think all of the first three were probably pretty expected practice.
We talk about those things. Yeah. We're going to talk about community coming up, and that you talk about that at church, right?
Yeah.
It's been elevated in the Western hemisphere, in the Western culture.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I wanted to ask you. Why, if it is such an obvious practice we see in scripture, you mentioned when Jesus says, he says when you fast, not if you fast.
Yeah.
Why do you think this has been so overlooked or neglected in our Western
I don't know. I think
Christianity?
I think we live in a land of plenty, and food it's an idol for us.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a hard thing to give up. I think we've broken. I think the church has moved. Not all churches, but like specifically our church as a non-denominational church. And I understand the reasons for the sake of freedom. You've moved away from the ritual and sometimes the liturgy. So if you're Catholic, no one would say the Catholic Church has moved away from fasting. They fast every single year with rhythm. But in the move away from liturgy, there are some things that can be lost. Yeah. Now, I know some liturgy or some rituals, they're just rituals. They're just kind of things that you just do them because we're Catholic or we're fill in the blank of denomination. But there's some beauty and there's some things that are lost. So those would be two of my reasons why it's hard to give up food when you live in a land of plenty. And our culture is attached to food.
Yeah.
It's celebrated. It's talked about on television. It's looked forward to as reward. And so I think that's a challenging thing to want to consider not having. It's actually, it feels simple, but it's not. Jesus in his day, they would have fasted, Jewish men, I believe men, 2 days a week. That was the practice, just 2 days a week. So when Jesus said that, he was talking to a group of people who fasted rhythmically. That was another piece that I didn't get to talk about. Yeah. There are like momentary or occasional fasts. Hey, this is going on in my life. I'm facing a challenge. I need direction. God, I need an answer. But then there is just like the practice of rhythmically fasting. So I didn't have time to get into both of those as well. Yeah.
And even I guess with that would be almost even the practice of the church calendar or different seasons where we're kind of called corporately to fast, or like in Jewish tradition, they would have had specific days or holidays.
The Jewish feasts they're beautiful in their call to remembrance, in the way they elevate the story of God and cause you to like shift your eyes from everything going on in this world and, hey, let's remember this. So that's another piece that I think is the church grew up in a time period where not everybody had the written word. And so the church, there was a select few who was educated, who could read, who could teach. And one of the ways to learn something was to do it with rhythm and with repetition. And so some of that has also gotten lost as we have more information at our fingertips, and education has increased as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that
was a really nerdy answer, but it's true.
Oh, I love that. I find that so
the
interesting.
Gutenberg printing press. I Western PA'd that. The printing press. The printing press. It changed the world in a lot of ways and really challenged some things that were normative. But that's why. So your question last week on the podcast really shaped a little bit of my sermon about, hey, let's not forget why we practice these things. So thank you for that. As you said it, I was like, yeah, I probably need to retouch on that. We're about a third of the way through the sermon series. So
yeah, I thought it was so interesting. I love the phrase, and maybe this is a common phrase, I don't know, but I'd never really noticed it before.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Fasting is praying with our bodies?
Yep.
Is that like, I had never thought of it that way before.
That was enlightening for me.
Yeah.
Because there is so again, in our Western culture, and I don't say it, sometimes people say that in a pejorative way. It's just what it is. We are
yes,
different.
Everyone has, than
the Near Eastern or Far Eastern,
correct,
Middle Eastern cultures. But I don't know how much we connect the physical body to our spiritual journey.
Yeah,
we
this
sort
was
of
my question.
Separate them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this reconnects them because we are given a body, and it does create emotions and feelings, and fasting creates an intersection point of those two things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is so interesting.
We're called to sacrifice our bodies. So,
Yeah. Well,
right?
yes. And even this idea of loving the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, and mind. And I think
one of them also includes body. I think there's one that has 4.
Oh yeah, your
up a
body.
couple
I
of
meant to even
times.
say that.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. And so
I was asking, but stating a question.
Yes.
I wasn't sure.
No, it does.
It
does.
Yeah.
Yes. But it's not funny that I just went to heart, soul, mind. I think because I do think maybe, I don't know where this comes from. We need a historian in here, but maybe it is like the Enlightenment, this idea that we've just swung so much towards cognitive, really
focus
highlighting the mind
and soul, heart.
Yeah.
Those would be like 2 areas.
Yeah.
And we did need those. So we have experienced the Enlightenment was this revolution of education and understanding in a beautiful way, but it also pushed us towards some humanist tendencies,
right?
Dependence on self for so many things. And somewhere along the way, our physical bodies, it's kind of gotten disconnected from worship and from our pursuit of being disciples of Jesus and our identity there. So fasting re-engages that in a cool way. But again, and I can't stress this enough. I grew up hearing about fasts, and it could be anything. And it can be. You can fast from social media. You can fast from Netflix. You can fast from whatever sort of thing it is. But those aren't necessarily fasts that engage your body, that engage like feeling something, need in your body. There's something I believe special about food fasts and challenging ourselves with food fasts that's a key.
Yeah, I think when I began thinking of it that way, maybe for the first time ever, about the need to engage my body, that I'm a holistic, spiritual being, my mind and my body need, and my soul, like all need engaged in the worship of God.
Yeah.
It really brought new light to the idea of fasting for me, from food specifically, and why that would be an important practice, and how engaging my body is an important part of my spirituality.
Yeah, we lose things when one of those 3 areas atrophies. So if you go a whole, do you remember finals week in college?
Yeah.
Your mind is engaged. Your heart is really dreaming and wanting a grade. You have no time for exercise. And at the end of the week, you feel terrible.
Yeah.
Because you didn't physically.
The flu, every time, as
all
soon
the
as
time.
the finals is over.
I had a 2-day flu when I got home, and I remember I was wiped out. But my baseball coach always said, hey, one of the best things you can do during finals week is work out at least 3 or 4 times. And I never understood that. I never even believed him. And I thought, I got to study, right? But there is something whenever we go and we're all exercising, we don't, engage our mind, something atrophies inside of us, and we're not like our best self or our whole self. I know that sounds like so self-helpy, but something's missing, something's lacking. And I think something's lacking spiritually if we don't engage our body. There's also a physical engagement of body during worship as well. Clapping hands is making an instrument. It's a noise. Like raising your hands during worship. And I know everyone's like, but there is something that like brings my body into that moment, sacrificing it and surrendering to the Lord. So yeah, I think that unearthed something cool.
Yeah, it was really interesting to think about. Yeah. Well, you spent time in Isaiah, which is my favorite book of the Bible. Yeah. So I was very excited.
It's one of your desert island books.
It
I feel
is.
Like you said
that would be one of my desert island.
I didn't say that on the podcast. Allison, I was so self-indulgent. She asked me what 5 books of the Bible I would take, and afterward we were off camera, and Isaiah was one of her books. So
it is probably one of my top.
Yeah.
And so let me just flip right there to Isaiah 58.
Are those a couple of your favorite sections? Those are popular sections.
Yeah, 61 forever, you know.
Feels like a tattoo, 61 forever, forever.
EVA. Isaiah 61 was one of the first sections of scripture I memorized when I became a believer, and just really has, it is a gospel, like the way you said it exactly. It is like, continues to point me to the heart of Jesus always. Yeah. But even in Isaiah 58, when they're talking about the fast, we're fasting and God, why aren't you answering us? And then he responds with this, hey, you're not fasting in a way, this is the type of fast I choose.
Their hearts weren't pure.
Yes. And kind of just like your fasts are making things work. Like you're grumbling, you're angry with your neighbor, you're causing division. And so what's the type of fast that I've called you to? It is to, and then my pages are sticking together here in my Bible. Let me find the exact thing.
6 and 7 is where I read
from. The bonds of wickedness, to undo the straps of the yoke and let the oppressed go free.
Share your bread with the hungry.
Yeah. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry? I think even there, is it not to share your bread with the hungry? And I know that the early church had this idea of almsgiving. And so they practiced pretty often in their calendars this idea of fasting and then using both the money they would have spent on food and the time they would have spent on food to give it to the poor. So whether that was the actual food they were giving or whether it was some of the time it would have taken to make them meal. So I just think sometimes we read... I'll speak to myself. I sometimes read scripture like this, and I find it so beautiful in the sense of like, yes, this is what the Lord calls us to. It is an act of biblical justice. Like fasting should also be an act of biblical justice. It's not only, sometimes I think of it as just only me and God, but there's this other kind of component to it too that's so interesting.
It should lead us to some sort of gospel action.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So
I was trying to draw us there. And there's a little bit of me. Here's what I believe in this Lenten fast that I've asked the church to go on. I believe we are going to see people in need spiritually and physically. And my hope and prayer is that we will be led to respond to them. So it could be, hey, I need to start speaking to this person about Jesus. We're gonna hear about witnessing, and I'm not sure how strongly we engage in that, right? But it could be like, I need to feed this person. I need to give money toward this person. There should be a gospel response because we see differently through this. Yeah, it is. I love what you pointed out there. It's not just okay, God, this is a me and you thing. It is that, but anytime that's healthy and biblically accurate, it always leads to
which you spoke about compassion. It would bring compassion in us.
Yes, co-suffering.
Yeah. So I guess, and maybe you answered this, and maybe it's just the act of fasting, but how do we live like we believe this is true, you know, in such a way that I think it can be so easy to fast and kind of just go through the motions and be like, okay, I'm not going to eat for 24 hours. And then I just survive the 24 hours and woo, that was great. Now I get to go have a burger. Yeah. Like how do we engage
so like
the Lord during that time?
Humbly, we have to, I'm going to share about a personal story.
Yeah, please.
A very recent personal story. But we have to go in with this understanding and this why. Almost expecting, okay, God, you're going to put something in my path that leads me to compassion, that leads me to extend your gospel. in a beautiful way. And yesterday I felt prompting from the Spirit. So this is not like spiritual pride, right?
No, I think it's helpful to hear real examples though.
Okay. I felt in the morning I'm supposed to fast through lunch. And I did, right? And I had a meeting in the afternoon with someone who was struggling through something. I believe that fast postured my heart to sit with that person in compassion and not just give an answer, and like really sit and listen maybe differently. Because when you got a busy day, sometimes you think, okay, I got an hour. I sat longer than an hour with the person, and it wasn't about the rest of my day. And I had real peace sitting in that moment with that person. And what they needed wasn't an answer from me. They needed presence and acknowledgement of the struggle and the pain, like being with. And I felt like the compassion, the fast yesterday really just caused my cognizance, my body to be aware of this is important right now. So that to me was a gospel moment. As I sat at the end of my night last night, I've been reading stuff about reflective prayers at the end of your day, thanking God for, God, where did I taste your gospel today? Where did I see your grace in motion? That was a moment. And it wasn't me. It was like it was a picture of how uplifting grace is when we extend it. And it wasn't just, because if we're not careful, we're so busy, people are just a thing to get through or an obstacle to remove in our day. And so there was something different about the meeting and my heart in that meeting. And I really believe it was in connection with the fast. Yeah. So
do you think,
I hope I'm not like, and you're not supposed to, this isn't for public.
No, I know, but I think that's really helpful.
It's practical.
We have to hear examples of what this looks like.
So our expectations, it's okay to have expectations of, God, I'm expecting you're going to put something in my path to go and be your hands and feet, like extend your gospel here in this moment. And so I think that's the first step. And here's another, I'm answering a long-winded way. We got to take risks. You got to take a shot. Like sometimes when the Holy Spirit prompts me to give money to someone who's asking for money on the side of the road, I've got 1,000 reasons why not, 1,000 intentions for that $20. And I never have cash. And it's a dance all the time. But to me, it's just like okay, Lord, I'm going to take a risk. There's always a step of faith in these moments. So, but expect, take a step, watch God show up. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's so interesting too, even for to go back to your example from yesterday, fasting is always such a reminder of our humanity, like our limitations. We are very limited. We have to consume to survive
often.
Yeah. And so
not as often as we think, but we do. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe not eating hands every day, but, I think of sleep this way too, as these being just, actually really beautiful limitations the Lord has put in place in our lives that are kind of a reminder that we are not all powerful. We cannot sustain ourselves.
Yep.
Now God himself doesn't have to consume. You look at like the burning bush, for example, he can burn in a bush and not consume it. But humans have this, we have to consume. There's no way we can live without consumption.
Yeah.
And so it's just a continual pointing towards our humanity.
Our dependence.
And our dependence. And then I think that helps.
We don't like that.
No.
We run from that.
And I think our natural bent is towards kind of hiding our need, hiding our dependence, hiding some of that stuff. And so even to our own selves, like I think we can think we're more powerful or able to do more than we actually can. And so the physical limitations of our bodies remind us who God is and that we have need for him.
Yeah. So wait till we talk about Sabbath.
Yeah.
Like that's like a built-in acknowledgement of our limitations. And I think because we don't acknowledge our need for rest, we're running around weary and ragged, and we're not supposed to. Yeah. And it does come down to acknowledging need. I feel like you were getting to a question though. Were you?
No, it was just, I was thinking when you were talking yesterday about your meeting, I think when you're fasting, there's this sense, I would imagine it helps put you in a place of like, I need the Lord, which also helps me enter into this conversation with this person in need, because I recognize I'm relying on the Lord for this conversation and not just relying on my own ability.
Yeah.
I think it can be so easy to get through the day and just like power through all the things we need to get done.
Yeah.
But when you're putting yourself in a place of surrender to the Lord,
You're praying with your
day,
body.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And acknowledging your need. And it's like, I had never seen that until my prep for last week's sermon, just about the simple mechanics. There's weakness. It'll reveal some things that you're dependent on, and those aren't always good things, like those lesser loves. And then the compassion piece. It's simple and beautiful and powerful all at once. Fasting. Yeah. And I'm growing in it, right? I had someone come up to me and say after a service, they were like, we don't think we can fast from food for 40 straight days.
Oh.
I said, I don't think that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
But I want you to pray and ask God. Challenge looks different for anyone and everyone. And this is, so I looked, it was a year ago in May, so not quite a year, 10 months ago, where during the Esther series, I preached on fasting to close out that and started to say, hey, we're going to start moving in this journey as a church. And it's neat to see where we are. At the first time I talked about it, I thought, I got to say everything I can about fasting. There's no way. I just think it needs to be a part of our ongoing dialogue.
A practice.
With rhythm. So we started the year with fasting, and now this Lenten season, I had a line tucked in there. No, we're not becoming a Catholic church. We're just taking advantage of the Christian calendar, and this is a great season to really join in with so many other people in a fast and focus on the gospel. So
let's talk about the Christian calendar. My question I wrote down was just Lent. What's up with that? Like, let's talk about Lent. I'm curious about your experience with Lent, maybe even growing up. I think depending on the type of church you grew up in, Lent may have not even been a practice.
It wasn't.
And so, and probably in a non-denominational church, it's not a very common like we kind of do something different every year. So curious about how you think about Lent and how the church calendar or Lent can help shape our discipleship. Yeah,
I am intrigued by the church calendar, by the rhythms, by consistency over time. And that's what liturgy does. I think sometimes there's pendulum swings. Don't even worry about that clock. They're going to click off. Saw me look. If they don't want to listen, they're not going to listen to this, right?
If you're still listening, bonus points to you. This is a good
question, right? Yeah. Shout out to my mom and dad because I know they're still listening. I love them. They're awesome. But I think we need those rhythmic things in our calendar because it does build discipline and it builds understanding, and you can add on top of that. My first experience with Lent, my grandma, my family, my extended family is all Catholic for the most part, and I spent time with her because my mom was teaching, my dad was at work. So after school, I went with my grandma. I got ashes on my forehead one time, and I remember just like, you can't wash these off. So I went home, and my mom was like, "What's on your head?" And then she was like, because she was raised Catholic. Yeah. So I had ashes on my head. That was like my first, I think I was like 6. I was young, and I had this. I went with my grandma, right? Yeah. And I didn't know what it was all about, but that was like my first experience into, and then huge Catholic hometown, fish fries were a big deal. I didn't get why part of their fast is not eating meat, and fish is not considered a meat. But I never understood that. So Lent is about contemplating the cross. It's about considering everything Jesus. It's 40 days leading up. There's also some significance 40 days after Pentecost happens. So it's a heart preparation season, not just a denial of food. And then I remember it was a fad in middle school. People were like, well, what are you fasting for Lent? What are you fasting for Lent? I didn't have an answer. My church didn't do it, but I said I was fasting
Gummy
stuff.
bears? Was that your?
That was like adult age. That was 30s.
Oh,
Oh yeah. Shame on me, right? Hey, if you weren't here on Sunday, Saturday night, I missed saying that, but the gummy bear piece, that was funny, but true.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my experience in Lent. And I think we have to, and gosh, it deserves it, man. The cross is so beautiful. Resurrection Sunday is so amazing. I think in the last 3 or 4 years, I think I tried to lead our church to have more Good Friday moments. Yeah. And maybe we'll have some Good Friday services as well, because do we take enough time to contemplate the cross? Last year, John Riley preached on the cross on Palm Sunday, because I don't know if we give it enough attention. A couple of years ago, Amanda taught on like the significance of Palm Sunday itself. And so, yeah, I don't want to swing a pendulum. I'm always aware of that, of like, oh, we're going to follow this exactly, but there's beauty in following it.
Yeah.
It's needed reminders. And isn't it going to be better if we all are like contemplating Easter and its significance? To me, I love Christmas, but Christmas is the start of Easter.
Mm-hmm.
I try to say that every year at Christmas. Like, it's beautiful that he was born and what a gift, but look at where it was leading. That to me is like the awe of Christmas, is look where this story's going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Esau Macaulay has a book out about Lent, and he kind of talks about, well, he's a church calendar maximalist. So he's all about the church. Yes, he's all about.
I've never heard that word.
I mean, I'm kind of.
No, it's a good word. Yeah.
I don't know that he would self-describe, but
yeah.
In that he's like all about the church calendar. And one of the arguments he makes is that our calendar dictates our life way more than we would maybe even be mindful of. Like, you can easily talk to anybody. What do you do in September? What do you do in December? We're thinking about like back to school. And so some of our
church attendance is in connection with our Western culture.
Well, small group connect. We do the small group connect because it's like back when we're going back to school,
it's a new rhythm.
And everybody's back into, so
we're going to turn our clocks back this Sunday.
Yeah.
And church attendance is going to be down.
Yeah.
By almost 15%. It is every year. Yeah. And it's like, we know this is coming. But
we will have one more hour of sunlight. So
we will.
I'm looking forward to that.
That trade is worth it, isn't it? Yeah. Anyways.
So just this idea that our lives are so shaped by our calendars, that in his mind, that practicing the church calendar, which is going really against the calendar of the cultural
calendar,
is kind of one of our last greatest acts of rebellion, in a sense, in that we are saying, like, we won't be defined,
not transforming to the pattern of this world.
Yes.
Yeah.
But instead, so he would, I mean, this is maybe going really far, but he would like even argue, why do we celebrate Easter on a Sunday? If it falls on a Tuesday, we should just stop we shouldn't conform to the pattern of the world.
Yeah.
It's a Tuesday. And I know
that's
an
the one day
argument.
I can never predict. When is Easter going to be this year?
Yeah.
I have to look it up every year. I don't know.
But it's an interesting idea that he's proposing in the sense of, it does make sense to rethink how the calendar is affecting my life and giving space and pause towards, and Lent's a great opportunity to practice this if you've never really thought about the church calendar before, I think, to think about, for years and years and years, Christians have taken this time to ponder the cross, and how can I join in with the church, capital C, in this? I
think that's a beautiful thing, is to even start thinking of the church at large throughout the world right now, but throughout all of history has done this. And it seats you in a grander story, and it minimalizes just how important we all are, but how important the bigger church itself is. I don't even know. I was just wondering, like, the actual meaning. I'm going to look this up. Some of you are probably going to say, hey, I know the answer. If you do, come in. If you see me this weekend or this week, tell me the actual meaning of Lent itself. I don't even think I took time to look that up. Yeah. I'm going to ask Mary Mercer.
She'll know.
I think she'll know.
Yeah. Okay, well, Mary, we're waiting for you. We'll wait for your answer.
Yeah.
Phone a friend here on the podcast.
Mary is going to be the guest on the 167 podcast, a little cross promotion
today
right now. Yeah.
Oh, well, you can just ask her today. Then.
I am going
You'll
to.
Get the answer.
Because we're talking about praying with your body, and she's our prayer pastor, and just want to talk about like prayer and what that looks like more and more and more. So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Dave,
how are we on time?
We're going kind of long, but okay. Last question then.
Yeah, shoot.
I think let's take this to a really practical place. What are practical tips? If I've never fasted before, how would you suggest I get started?
Yeah, I would start with, I'll give you two options. A good starting point is a specific food that you eat a lot. I wouldn't put coffee in there. Coffee has caffeine. If you fast you're going to be worse than hangry. You're going to have an awful headache. Someone once told me I tried to cut caffeine out of my body, and this is what they said. So we're going to go long, whatever. They would say, hey, you need to go to half calf for a season, and then like quarter calf, and then zero. I was like, why? She goes, well, that's how addicts step out of an addiction. I said, I'm not an addict. She goes, yes, you are. And I was like, oh my gosh, so there's like a weaning off of it, right? So I would, if the Lord's saying it, do it. But I would pick a food substance and maybe fast from that for all 40 days, or like a rhythm of meals, 3 lunches a week or 1 lunch a week, what I feel the Lord is leading me to do is through the Lenten season, Tuesdays, to do a full day fast every Tuesday. And so that's what I'm going to do. And so it can be more than that. It can be less than that. Let's close the door of comparison.
Yeah.
Because it's about a challenge for you and yourself. And we do all have different, yesterday I had awful heartburn. When I fast, I get heartburn. So be aware of that as well. There's another practical tip.
And there are real medical
issues.
Needs. Yes.
100%. And so I would say, if you have a medical issue, please be wise. Talk to a doctor. There are substitute fasts as well. If that's not your case, it would encourage a food fast. And so the big word has been challenge. That's the operative word. What's challenging for you? So Brooke and I were talking about this, and so we're gonna talk as a family about it and go after it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
This is a great conversation.
Yeah, fun.
I really enjoy talking about it because it's such a unique and different practice, I think, that we don't get to talk about very often.
Plus, I found out about a new word called maximalists. That's super cool.
Well, you've never heard the word maximalist in general?
No, a maximizer.
Oh, I think of maximalist all the time.
I know minimalists. It's the opposite. I get it. I just never heard it. I've never heard it.
I use it a lot for design, for interior design.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a design maximalist. More is more, you know.
TJ Maxx.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
There you go.
I think it might be in there. We've got an advertisement for them up there. Okay, well.
Sponsoring the podcast.
Okay, well, great to have you here, Dave.
Thanks, Allison.
Thanks for the
fun.
chat. Yep. Bye.